All right, welcome back to the Koinonia Podcast. Here with Shanti Landon. How are you?
I'm great.
This girl knows everything about everything, and we're gonna dive right in because we want you to listen and get some nuggets about adoption, open adoption, foster to adopt. But let's start with your story. Tell us your story. We can dive in and try to understand and give us that picture of where you're at right now at the end.
Okay. So I decided when I was 6 years old that I wanted to adopt. I grew up in this really difficult circumstance and a lot of abuse in our home. And I just one day asked God to rescue me, even though I really didn't necessarily have a relationship with God at the time, but I just knew there must be some God out there. And I just really felt like it was one of the very few times in my life where I felt like I heard God say, I'm not going to rescue you, but I'm going to walk with you. And so here's, little 6-year-old Shanti. And I was like, okay. But when I grow up, I'm going to turn that around and rescue a kid, basically, is how I thought. That's what I thought. So anyway, so my husband and I both decided, if we could have a bio kid, we would love to. And so we were, blessed to have our oldest. And shortly thereafter, we adopted Josh, who was 6 months old at the time. And then we waited a couple years. We thought we were actually just done with our 2 boys. And we kind of both at the same time thought, oh, well, maybe we should adopt again. But we both thought we were only supposed to parent boys. We were like absolutely sure we were never supposed to have daughters. And so we were like, let's look for 2 boys because Caleb and Josh were so close in age. So we looked for 9 months. We got denied a couple times because we were going to have 4 kids under 4. And at the time I'm like, what's the big deal? It's no biggie, But now I'm like, oh gosh, I understand. So at some point our social worker said, why don't you just leave it up to God? Let him decide whether you have a boy or a girl. And I'm like, okay, but I know I'm not supposed to have a girl. And so sure enough, within a week we got matched with Michael and Naomi. They were 3 and 1 at the time. Then we thought, great, this is good. We've got our 4 kids, 3 boys and a girl. And then a week later, our social worker called and said, are you ready to be a mom of 5? And I'm like, don't even kid with me. And she's like, I'm not kidding. Birth mom's pregnant. And Chris was on the phone and he's like, oh, it's fine. We have another spot in the van. Like, we'll be fine. So I'm like, I will never get
that's what determines
a bigger
the
car.
number of kids you adopt is how many van spaces you have.
Yes. So anyway, so we got Gracie when she was 6 weeks old, and she is Michael and Naomi's full sibling, and she's 12 now. 12. So
that's your youngest,
the story.
now.
She's our youngest, unless you count our dog. But
no, I don't.
Okay.
Actually, I'm a dog person. I'm not a cat person. Sorry.
Me too.
That says something about.
I think so too. There's some psychological profiles in there. All my kids are dog people.
Yeah, mine too.
But I probably have brainwashed them somewhat.
Don't we? It's funny. Our founder used to say, "More is caught than taught."
Yeah.
You can talk to your kids till you're blue in the face, but they're watching you. They got your eyes on you, and what you do, they will, fortunately or unfortunately, replicate.
Yeah.
And so the journey. What were your expectations, so to speak, as far as like what adoption would feel like, what it would be like? Did you ever think about the future of what's it going to be like when they turn 18?
Yeah, well, like I said, I came into it with the perspective that I was going to rescue a kid and realized pretty quickly that it's not at all what it's about. I would hope that our kids have a much better, more enriched life and more stable life than had they stayed where they were. But I think going into it, we took the training classes and I do remember being told.
How much do you remember?
Not very much.
No
Not
offense
very much
to
at
us
all.
amazing foster care
I
trainers
think a good
out
way
there.
of really doing the training is to just send a couple to go live with a family for maybe a week and let them. Yeah, I think. Oh, that's even better. Have the parents leave and they can.
Well, we can train till we're blue in the face. we can assess you and you can look perfect on paper. But until you get a kid in that home.
Yeah.
You do not know your capacity and ability.
It's true. And so, I remember being told in the training, it's not all, flowers and this unicorns or whatever. But you really can't know until you actually, like you said, get that kid in your home. And with Josh, he was only 6 months old, and so the biggest struggle for me was that I didn't realize I wasn't going to bond with him right away, and it took me a year, and for pretty much a year, I felt like he was really kind of like a nephew, like I wanted to protect him and take care of him, and I cared about him. But it wasn't like I looked at him and was just like, oh, that's my boy, like I didn't feel that. And it really was really hard for me. And I thought there was something wrong with me. Like, what the heck is going on? And finally one day it just kind of clicked, and I was like, that's my boy. And I finally felt it. With Michael and Naomi, when they came, Michael was 3, and so he was older. He was completely nonverbal, and it was very difficult because I had no idea. He just seemed like this, sweet, quiet kid. That's all we had seen, and he was sweet and quiet, but he also had experienced so much trauma and had no way of verbalizing any of that. And the first day we brought them home, he took a toy from one of the boys, and I said, "Oh, we don't do that here. We share, and I kind of went through the whole thing. And he
Let me assimilate you to our culture.
Yeah. And so he freaked out and kind of threw a tantrum. So I just kind of set him in the corner for a minute to cool down. And he started kicking the walls and punching the walls. And so I went over and I sat him on my lap, and I just wrapped my arms around him, and I'm like, it's okay, it's okay. And then he bit me. And so I just put him back in the chair. I went into my room and I just started bawling. I was like, what the heck did I do? What did I do?
This got real quick. And because, you had an idea of how wonderful adoption, and this isn't about foster care, right? This could happen from overseas adoptions. This could happen because loss is loss.
Right.
Yeah. Whether it's a sweet transaction as an infant from a biological mother to an adoptive parent, or if it's a 7-year-old being adopted into a new family and losing the rest of their biological family in that moment, it's a loss. It's all loss. And you don't know what their personalities are going to do. You don't know what their temperament and their trauma impact and then subsequent behaviors. You just don't know, right?
Yeah.
And then there you are, they're biting you. And
yeah, it was a wake up call, I guess. And to realizing, holy cow, this is a real thing. This isn't just oh, we're parents of 4 kids. We're parents of 4 kids, but we've got some serious things that we're going to have to deal with. And so it was really hard. And Naomi, she would not let Chris hold her. She would freak out with any man. And, she was so young, we have no idea why or what happened. But she literally would scream bloody murder if we even put her next to him on the couch. And so here I've got Michael, who is internally, he's just a mess, and I have no idea how to help him. And then Naomi won't let anyone but me hold her. And so that first 6 months was really, really hard. And I think we very quickly realized okay, this is a ministry. These kids we're not here to fix them. We're not going to be able to fix them.
That's amazing you say that. One of our themes here is we don't fix kids. We provide healthy environments for them to grow and to heal.
Yeah.
But we can't just go in there like a doctor and fix the problem and be, okay, we're good now.
Yeah. And you can't do that with bio kids either. I wish that you could just take your kids' pain or whatever, or even with ourselves. We can't even really do it with ourselves.
If we're lucky, that's the one person we do have control over today is ourselves.
Yes.
It's such a interesting realization for us when we realize we can't control somebody else. We can't fix somebody else. But isn't there kind of a peace that comes with that?
Yeah, there is. I feel very thankful that we learned early on in our parenting journey, because I know so many parents who really struggle with letting their kids have freedom and giving them letting them kind of fly, I guess. Or trying to keep them in a box of what they think their kids should be doing. And I think we learned really early on, because of how difficult it was, that we can't control those outcomes. All we can do is give them a safe, loving home and give them the most opportunities we can give them to thrive. But at the end of the day, these kids are just on loan to us. And
what would you say, like, why does a kid do it? Like, did you ever personalize? That's something we talk about a lot. Is, do you personalize the behavior? Is it about you? Did you feel like it was a personal attack towards you?
Probably early on, I felt like, what are we not doing right? What is it that we're doing wrong that he or she is struggling with X, Y, or Z? Because there was always a kid. One of our kids has always been like, thankfully they didn't all struggle at the exact same time. Usually.
That's very nice, actually.
But yeah, I think it just is it's a I'm trying to think of how to best put it in words, but there is a very clear sense of freedom knowing that the burden is not on our shoulders. Like, it's not our fault that they are struggling the way they're struggling. And it's not our responsibility to figure out every detail of how they're going to get better. I think it is our job as their adoptive parents to give them the opportunities to heal and to make sure we're providing them with resources so that they can. But at the end of the day, they're going to make the choices they're going to make. And
well, sometimes parenting is the word that keeps coming to me, or I'm not sure if it's one word, but long suffering. Yes. That's what parenting is. It's like, I'm going to see you through this tantrum. I'm going to see you through this tantrum again when you're 15, and what is that like? Have you seen a significant change in the kids as far as their adoption perspectives and desires for reaching out to biofamily? Like, when did that, or has that been an issue for you guys?
It has not yet. I'm pretty sure that at least one of our kids is definitely going to want to find his birth parents. One of our kids, when we got him, we didn't really know much at all about his birth parents. We did have their names, and so we hired a private investigator at the very beginning to find his birth parents so that we would have that information for him instead of waiting until 18, because at the time we didn't even really have internet very much when we first got him. But the other kids, I think that they will probably want to meet their birth family, and I've never felt felt threatened by that. And I think that goes hand in hand with that realization that they're not our kids. Like, it would thrill me to know, if our kids actually were able to meet their birth parents in the future and have a relationship with them. I hope it wouldn't be a dysfunctional, abusive type relationship, but if they could have a relationship with their birth parents, I think it would be the most incredible thing in the world. Because if it were me, I would want that. I would want to know where I came from and to feel that connection. And I think, especially, they all have half siblings that are out there, and I think it would be so healing for a kid to know, like, to have a sibling, a real blood sibling that's out there, and
that doesn't have to negate your position as adoptive mom.
No, not at all. I think, it's, if parents get divorced, I feel like when they get remarried, you would never say, they're, just because they got a stepmom means that their real mom is less important, or flip-flop. I feel like the more the better when it comes to especially that healing of that incredible loss. I read the book Primal Wound. Have you read that one?
No.
It's really, really good and written by a therapist who's an adoptive mom. But she really goes through the studies that have been done on the biological connection between a birth mom and her child in utero, and how even if you were to take that child the second they were born from their parent, that there's a loss that's suffered there, and it's a biological loss. And I think that book gave me a little bit more empathy into understanding that loss with our kids.
Yeah, I sometimes talk about my journey as a social worker, because I, for over 20 years, have watched these situations unfold. Foster care reunification, foster care towards adoption, and I have met many biological families. And my heart at first was like, these people must be horrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then through my career, I have never met a just one parent I had a really challenge with, and I've met many, and every single one of them loved their kid.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of them struggled with some sort of behavior.
Yeah.
But they absolutely loved their kids, and from their perspective, they were doing the best they could.
Mm-hmm.
And my heart started to break, and our goal became to educate our parents, who probably will adopt these children,
Mm-hmm.
that these parents, the biological parents, are not the enemy here.
Right.
They really aren't. In fact, that many children do want to reach out and
Mm-hmm.
meet their parents. And so what we're talking about is open adoption.
Mm-hmm.
And in any way we can embrace that, I encourage it.
Mm-hmm.
It's super important for the kid. And our founder used to say, if you can't love the biological parent, the child will never feel loved by you,
Yeah.
because that's who they are. That's where they come from. It's their
Yep.
genetic makeup.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to reject that, you're going to reject the child too.
Yeah.
And whether that makes sense or not, it's true. Like whether you feel it or understand it as an adoptive parent. And so also a part of the conversation is the sense of adoption failure rates. So we've been talking in our podcast about adoption failure rates are on the rise. People adopted them when they're cute. Now they're acting a little more interesting as a
Yeah.
teenager or whatnot. And people are relinquishing. They're calling the counties. They're calling the lawyers. They're saying, get out of here.
Yeah.
And so part of what Koinonia is trying to do is we're trying to step in and offer services and trainings and support and options
Mm-hmm.
to say, well, maybe do this instead of giving up completely.
Yeah.
So what would be your advice, or what can you share about that journey of when it gets hard
Mm-hmm.
when they're older?
So like I said, all of our kids have struggled in their own ways, usually not all at the same time, but one of our sons in particular really just has never been able to connect with us. And no matter, how much I tried, everything I did to try and connect with him, it just never would happen. And I mean, even on Mother's Day, like he would never give me a Mother's Day card, and or Christmas, like the kids would say, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I'd say, "Oh, just make me a card. I love their homemade cards," and he would just never do it. And so finally, when he was probably like 7 or 8, and I knew he did not like hugs, like he did not like any physical touch at all. And so I said, you don't have to give me a hug to show me you love me. Like you could, if you just came in and said goodnight to me at night before you went to bed, like that would be just as good to me. And he never did it. He would not do it. And I gotta say, I mean, it hurt a lot.
Yeah.
And so as he got older, I noticed myself withdrawing from him because I had tried everything I could to show him that I loved him, and had always just hoped like there would be a little give back. And there just never was. And so I finally just started to kind of put up a wall with him, and just not, because I didn't want to be hurt, and I felt like every time I gave something, it just was like a smack in the face to me,
Yeah.
And he started to, and it wasn't just me, he was like that with everyone, but I just felt it more. And he started to do things, very passive aggressive type things. Like he got mad that he got disciplined once and put a nail behind my tire so that, when I pulled out of the garage, I'd pop my tire. He knew he was absolutely not supposed to like take tools without asking, and he would do that all the time and like leave him out on the property on purpose. And took our chainsaw once and cut down a tree. Started to cut down a tree.
So it sounds like he was speaking out
yes.
in the way that he could.
Yeah. And, we did lots of counseling. We did TBRI, Love and Logic, like all of that stuff. He started like stealing all the time. We had to lock up like my purse and my husband's wallet. And
to be clear, this is not bad parenting. They didn't do anything. Many kids, unfortunately, have a desire to display certain behaviors to meet a need for them out of some sort of fear that they're having on the inside
Yep.
that he can't express to you. And so 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 it sounds like you're ramping up to something. What did you end up doing?
Well, so it was getting really, it was horrible because we were spending pretty much every night trying to put out a fire with him. Meanwhile, we have 4 other kids who are incredibly neglected because we're having to focus so much
Right.
time and energy on this one kid
Right.
who really, I mean, I think my husband used the term with me, not in front of him, but that it was like a cancer in our home. Like there was this cloud everywhere we went, um, and he was the source of it, and we just didn't know what to do. Like
Yeah.
we had tried therapy, we had, like I said, read all the parenting
Yeah.
books, you know, like we had done
Well, it's
everything we
one thing
could.
to understand the why,
Yes.
and you guys had compassion.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yes.
had the empathy, because when you go through all the books, what you end up learning is because you can't fix a kid, just because you know why they're doing it, doesn't
Yeah.
change the fact they're still
No.
doing it, and it's still in your face every day.
Yeah, and you know, it was, to me, it wasn't surprising that he was the way he was, because you know he had been, by the time we got him at 3, he had been in 3 foster homes, had you know, extreme neglect, obviously abuse in his past as well, and a lot of stuff that we don't even know about.
Right.
And so
Right.
at one point he had to steal food in order to eat, and so he would steal food out of our pantry, even though I'm like, you don't need to steal food,
Yeah,
like,
it's
you
here.
know. And so, but he just couldn't stop. It was like, I mean, it's like telling an alcoholic, just stop, like, why do
Yeah.
you, you know, it's not gonna, that's not
There's
gonna happen.
there's a driving force.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so we finally hit a climax, I would say, in his behavior and our level of like realizing we're not going to make it if we just if we just keep going and doing
Yeah.
what we're doing, and we're not going to make it.
Well, it's not working for him. It's not working
No.
for
And
you.
so,
And your marriage is, you know, then you got the struggles between the relationship and then the other kids' relation. I mean, it impacts everything.
it does, yes. And during that time, all of our other kids, it was one of the few times where all of our kids were struggling with something. And it was very clearly because of this issue that we couldn't address. And so I was talking to a friend, and she told me about a residential treatment center that was out of state. And she had sent her daughter there, and so we looked into it, and they use equine therapy as part of their program. And our son is a total cowboy.
I
Like,
think I saw a picture of
he's,
the hat on. Yeah.
I mean, if he could just be out working on a ranch all day by himself, that's like heaven for him. And so, we told him, like, hey, this is what we're looking at. And it's not because we want to get rid of you or
Right.
because we want to send you away. It's because we really want to help you, and we want you to have space to heal. And we don't know how to do that here because there's so many other dynamics. And if you can go there and get help, and your only focus is healing yourself for a
Yeah.
year, you know, maybe there's a chance that it might, you know, you might at least feel like, because he recognized he had problems and he admitted them, he just didn't know how to fix them.
Right.
And he wanted to fix them, which I think is a key
That's
piece of the
huge.
puzzle, because even though he said, I don't want to go, he also said, I think this is the best thing for me.
Well, and for your relationship,
Yeah.
because once he was gone, and it's not forever,
Right.
but your relationship can start to heal in a different way because you're not. You know, I had a therapist once tell me you don't have marriage problems if you're not in a marriage, right? and so with the kids, you're not going to have relationship issues if they're not in the home. And sometimes when they're not in the home and you have a visitation option, the relationship, the fear of that relational hurt or whatever it is that's driving him to the behaviors, well, you're not, the intimacy isn't there, the vulnerability isn't there because you're somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it's almost easier for the kids to connect when they're not living with you. It's really weird, but it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's been there 9 months now. And we have like a weekly Zoom therapy session with him. And then we talk to him every weekend. And he's come home for one home visit that was like a week long. And then he'll come home for Christmas for like 11 days or something.
And how old is he? He's 16?
He's 15.
15. Okay.
And you know, I mean, we'll see when he comes back.
Yeah.
And I don't expect like a different person or like some huge drastic change that's like the picture of what I used to think adoption was.
Yeah.
I don't expect that. Really what I'm hoping for is just that he will have integrity and understand the importance of that, because we've always told our kids, like, the being able to trust you is probably the most important thing in our house. Like, and everything else we can deal with almost everything else. But if we can't trust you, it's very difficult to have a relationship with someone you can't trust. And so that has been one of the key things we've focused on in his therapy is, really talking about the things that he's done in the past and how that's going to impact the future and our level of trust.
Well,
and how
that's got to be what it's about, is him functioning in society.
Right. Yeah.
It's funny how we can get so in the conversation about the child and our home and succeeding with us and succeeding in our relationships. But what's funny is a lot of families with biological children who they raise and with no trauma, just a normal situation, by the time a kid's 16, they're never at home.
Right.
They're very independent. They're living their own life, and they do move on. And our founder used to say, even your own biological kids leave, because people are always so worried about losing the adopted kid or not being able to adopt a kid, or the kid's going to leave someday, or the kid. No. The parenting a kid isn't, for me, it isn't about how well they behave at home.
Right.
It's, are they going to become a productive member of society, and will they have healthy relationships, and will they serve others?
Right.
You and your husband are great models of serving others, and not just. We were talking actually about when you brought the kids over to volunteer some time in our office, because you modeled early on, life isn't about you.
Yeah.
And if you live a life where you think the world revolves around you, and you don't follow a system of structure in a world that requires structure,
right?
Our founder would say it's a living hell. I'm talking about her a lot because I just watched her videos again. But it's a living hell to think that you can just do whatever you want. And so I have always felt, because I've watched you guys raise your kids, that you're trying to give them a worldly perspective of how to serve and honor. And of course, you guys have a religious element to your family as well. And it was never about meeting your needs, is the point. And when parents get so bought into, I have failed, or I don't have a connection, this doesn't feel good for me, well, then it's easy to say, get the kid out.
Right.
And I'm not saying that kids shouldn't have to sometimes go. What I'm wanting the world, whoever's watching, to know is success can look different. I see your story as a success story. Even right now, with that child maybe not living at home, this is an adoption journey.
Yes.
And your story is success because you have loved them and cared for them and given them a role model of what it's like to be an adult in this world. And that's the success. We can't look at the moment, right, and say, oh, I failed because we're struggling in this moment.
Yeah.
It's not about this moment. It's about all the moments combined. And sometimes a kid's 28 or 30 before they come back and say, I get it.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's okay. And that's the message I'm hoping people are hearing today is it's not failure to struggle.
Right.
It's not failure to have to utilize a group home. And one day he might come back and stay with you guys. And that'll be great. And I've heard stories of kids coming back and then going back into group homes.
Right, me too.
And then coming back. And it's like, okay, just don't give up.
Yeah.
All I ask is use the systems so that you can not give up.
Yeah.
But relinquishing a child, because I've seen some kids who were adopted into foster care and then relinquished back into foster care, and then families that want to adopt that kid again, the kid's like, why?
Yeah.
Why would I do that again? And their heart becomes hardened.
Right.
And so we're so passionate about doing it well, doing it right, and not giving up. And so anyway, I know we can't go too long. That's an amazing story. Are there any other nuggets you'd really like the world to know about adoption? The whole world's watching.
Yeah. I think I would just say, like, for someone who's considering adoption, that to go into it knowing that, if you're trying to fill a void in your own life, it will not be pretty. If that's why you're adopting, that, approaching it with the perspective of, as a ministry, I guess, to say, this is where I've been called, and so I'm going to do the best I can with what I have. And just knowing that there are other people, for the parents who have adopted, knowing that there are other people like myself and other families who have walked the journey or are walking the journey and who can be there to just be a sounding board and know that you're not going to be judged. Because I think one of the things...
So reach out.
Reach out. And I think one of the hardest things as an adoptive parent is often feeling isolated and alone, like you're the only one who's having the struggles that you're having.
Right.
And so I think it would be super important to just know there are a ton of resources. And so to reach out to someone like you to get connected with those resources is vital. And I am always happy to have conversations with people or give a little bit of encouragement too.
And people can follow you. I don't know a lot about social media accounts and things, but you do have a social page or a public figure page. And man, this girl's putting stuff on there all the time that's helpful and encouraging others. And so I think that's amazing. And I think it's interesting that one of our sayings here is there's no success or failure in foster care adoption. It's about doing what you're called to do.
Yeah.
And if you just go and you serve, your fulfillment in your life will be knowing that you've done what you're called to do and helped others. It's not about, oh, they went to college. Oh, I adopted and they hugged me. Like, that might be stuff that's nice, but that's not success or failure.
Right.
When you're serving others, the success is in being a servant. And you got to find your fulfillment right there.
Yeah.
You go any further, you're in trouble. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Has been a
Thanks for
great
having
story. I hope you guys really enjoyed this. We'll see you at the next podcast. See you later.